Her husband chose money over love until karma knocked on his door. The lawyer looked at me and said something that made the entire room go silent. Mrs. Amara Adebayo, the house deed used for this loan carries your name, but the signature is not yours. My husband stopped breathing for a second. His mother dropped her glass on the table. Even the hotel manager, who had been smiling all evening, slowly stepped back. I was standing inside a private conference room at a luxury hotel in Victoria Island, Lagos. 10 minutes earlier, I thought I was attending a family celebration dinner. Tunde had told me his younger sister was finally getting married, and the family wanted to announce a new business deal at the same time. I wore my best navy dress and brought a small gift. I even forced myself to smile, though something had felt wrong all week. Then a bank officer called Tunde outside. Then a lawyer walked in. Then he placed 3 documents in front of me. One was a loan agreement. One was the deed to the 2-bedroom house I had spent 6 years paying for, and one was a notice of default. I stared at the papers, then at my husband. He could not look at me. His fingers shook above the polished table. His sister Kemi kept whispering, "Say something, say something." I did not cry. I did not shout. I only asked one question. When exactly did my husband sell my future? Nobody answered me. That was the first time I understood that the smiling faces around me had been hiding something for months. Everything changed because of that one moment. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. My name is Amara Adebayo. I was 34 years old then, and I lived in Lagos. I worked as a senior accountant for a medical supply company in Yaba. My life was not flashy, but it was stable. I believed in clean records, honest work, and sleeping with a peaceful heart. People often called me too calm. I never saw it that way. I just believed that panic makes expensive mistakes. I liked order. I liked plans. I liked knowing where every naira went before the month even started. I grew up in Enugu, in a small but disciplined home. My father was a civil servant, and my mother sold fabrics. They taught me one lesson again and again. Love is sweet, but responsibility keeps a roof above your head. I never forgot that. When I moved to Lagos, I shared a tiny room with another young woman and worked long hours. I saved slowly. I avoided debts. I wore simple clothes. I cooked at home. Every bonus I earned went into savings, fixed deposits, or building plans for a better future. Then I met Tunde. He was charming, confident, and full of dreams. He worked in business development and spoke like every closed door would open for him one day. He made me laugh. He made me feel seen. Most of all, he said he respected how careful I was with money. At the time, that meant everything to me. We got married in church 3 years later. I truly believed I had found a partner. I was not looking for a rich man. I was looking for a steady one, a good man, a man who would build slowly with me and never make me regret trusting him. My biggest dream was simple. I wanted a peaceful home, one child if God allowed it, and a life with no hidden shame. I wanted a marriage where truth sat at the table with us every day. I did not know then that truth was already being pushed out of my home. Tunde came from a larger family than mine. His father had died early, so his mother, Mama Bisi, ruled the house with strong hands and stronger opinions. Tunde was the first son, but he behaved like the family's rescue plan. Every problem landed on his head, and later on mine too. At first, I did not mind helping. His younger brother Femi needed school fees. I paid part of them. His sister Kemi wanted money for a catering course. I paid that too. When Mama Bisi had a surgery, I handled the hospital deposit without waiting to be asked twice. I did these things because I loved my husband. I thought helping his family meant building trust inside our marriage. I believed kindness would return to me one day. It did not. No matter how much I gave, it was never enough. If I paid one bill, they asked why I did not pay two. If I sent money late, I was called proud. If I suggested a budget, they said I was trying to control Tunde. Mama Bisi never insulted me directly in front of outsiders. She was too smart for that. Instead, she would smile and say soft, cruel things. Amara is a good woman. She just loves money too much. Some women know how to support a man without keeping records. Everyone would laugh lightly. Tunde would laugh too. Then he would tell me later not to take his mother seriously. But I always noticed something painful. Whenever his family needed help, he spoke loudly. Whenever I needed support, he asked for patience. When my mother fell ill in Enugu and I wanted us to send more money, he said business was tight. 2 weeks later, he bought Femi a new phone because the boy needed confidence. When I worked late nights to close company accounts, Mama Bisi told people I cared more about office money than family. When I organized Kemi's engagement contribution list because nobody else would do it, Kemi thanked my husband, not me. Still, I stayed calm. I cooked for visiting relatives. I hosted weekend prayers. I sent transport money. I smiled during birthdays. I adjusted. I forgave. I told myself family was not easy and marriage needed maturity. What hurt me most was not their behavior. It was my husband's silence. He saw everything. He just never chose me. Even then, I still believed we could fix it. I thought love plus patience could soften any hard heart. I was wrong. The first strange thing happened 4 months before that hotel meeting. I came home early one Thursday because our office server had crashed. Tunde was in the sitting room with Femi and Kemi. Papers were spread across the center table. The moment I entered, Kemi gathered them so fast that one file slipped to the floor. I bent to pick it up. Tunde reached it before me. "It's nothing," he said with a laugh. "Just business projections." I looked at him for a second. Tunde was not a man who hid papers from me. At least, he had never been. That night, he was unusually sweet. He ordered food. He rubbed my shoulders. He asked about my day. It felt less like love and more like distraction. After that, new small things started appearing. He changed the password on his laptop. He began taking calls on the balcony. He started visiting his mother almost every Sunday, even when she had nothing urgent. He also became interested in the house documents I kept inside a locked metal box. One evening he asked casually, "Where exactly did you keep the deed again?" I laughed and asked why he wanted to know. He said, "I'm your husband. Should I not know where our future is?" The answer sounded warm. Something inside me still felt cold. A week later, I opened the box and found the documents slightly rearranged. Nothing was missing, but I knew the order I kept them in. I had handled those papers too many times to be mistaken. Then came the wedding invitation. Kemi announced her church wedding date with excitement and noise. The family group chat became busy every day. Asoebi colors, guest list, makeup artist, hotel package. What confused me was the budget. They were spending money like people who had suddenly found a river inside their backyard. Tunde kept saying business was still slow, yet he was promising deposits, decorations, and even honeymoon support. When I asked how he could afford all that, he kissed my forehead and said, "Big things are coming. Trust me a little." I did trust him. That was the problem. 3 weeks later, I saw a message flash across his phone while he was in the shower. Collateral confirmation received. Client to sign final page. My hands turned cold. I did not open the phone. I did not want to become that wife. But for the first time, I felt fear sitting quietly inside my chest. I still did not know the full secret. I only knew that something in my marriage had started moving without me. The betrayal did not arrive with one explosion. It came like a slow knife. 2 days before the hotel dinner, my fixed deposit failed to renew. I got an alert from my bank and assumed it was a system issue. That savings account held money I had built for years. It was my emergency shield, my personal protection. I called the bank during lunch. The customer service officer said the deposit had been broken earlier by an in-branch instruction. I froze. In-branch by who? I asked. She said I would need to come in physically for more details. That evening, I told Tunde. He did not even pretend to be shocked. Instead, he sighed like I was becoming difficult. Amara, relax. I used it temporarily. I stared at him. You used my fixed deposit. It was for an opportunity, family opportunity. I was going to replace it. My ears rang. Without telling me? It is still our money, he said. Why are you acting like strangers? That sentence hurt more than the theft. He knew exactly how hard I had worked for that money. He knew the small sacrifices behind every amount. He knew I had built those savings before we married and kept adding to them after marriage because I wanted security, not luxury. I asked him what opportunity needed my money so urgently. That was when he finally said it. He and Femi had joined a hospitality investment with outside partners. The hotel in Victoria Island was part of it. Mama Bisi insisted the family needed a real business that could change their name forever. They believed profits would come fast. They needed cash for entry and more collateral for a larger loan. My blood went cold. What collateral? He looked away. I already knew the answer before he spoke. Our house papers. I felt something break inside me then, something deeper than anger. That house was not just property. It was the safest thing I had ever built. It was proof that my father's last advice had lived inside me. It was where I imagined raising children. It was where I thought truth lived. You used the house deed. For a short time, he said quickly. I was going to settle everything before you noticed. Before I noticed. Not before asking me, not before honoring me, before I noticed. I asked the question that mattered most. Did I sign anything? He said nothing. I asked again. His silence answered me. Kemi walked in then and said I was overreacting. Mama Bisi joined her and said, good wives support their husbands in seasons of growth. Femi said, all families make sacrifices. Tunde stood there and let them speak over me inside my own living room. Then he said the words I can never forget. If this works, everybody wins. If you truly love me, you will understand later. That night, I slept in the guest room and stared at the ceiling till morning. He had chosen money over my trust, and somehow he expected me to call that love. I thought that was the worst part. I was completely wrong. The next morning, I took a half day from work and began quietly. I did not call my mother. I did not cry to friends. I did not post anything online. I went first to my bank. A former colleague of mine, Ifeoma, still worked there in compliance. I did not give her a speech. I only showed her my alerts, my account statements, and my marriage certificate. Then I asked one question. Can you tell me exactly what was done in my name? She looked at me for a long moment, then led me into a small office. By evening, I learned 3 things. My fixed deposit had been broken in person. A large transfer had moved into a company account linked to the hotel project, and someone had submitted copies of my identification and house deed during a collateral review. The signatures attached to those records looked like mine from a distance. Up close, they were tired copies of my hand. I thanked Ifeoma and left before my face could betray me. That same night, I called a property lawyer named Barrister Namdi, a quiet man my company once used during a warehouse dispute. He agreed to meet me the next morning. He did not waste words. If your signature was forged, do not argue at home. Gather facts. So I gathered facts. First, he requested certified copies of every loan document connected to the house deed. Second, he checked the land registry to confirm whether any caveat or charge had been entered against my property. Third, he told me not to let Tunde know I had started. That part was easy. Tunde had already stopped seeing me as someone worth telling the truth. 2 days later, the first real clue arrived. The house had not been sold. It had been pledged as security for a business loan much larger than Tunde admitted. The amount made my stomach twist. He had not borrowed like a careful man trying to bridge a small gap. He had borrowed like a desperate gambler chasing an image. I thought that discovery would be the end. I was wrong again. Barrister Namdi then found that the borrowing company did not list me anywhere. Not as shareholder, not as director, not even as spouse's representative. The company records carried only 3 family names: Tunde, Femi, Mama Bisi. That meant something important. They wanted my assets, but not my place. By then, I had stopped feeling shock. I was running on clarity. I searched old emails at home while Tunde attended meetings. On our shared printer log, I found scanned copies of my passport photo, signature page, and deed. The files had been printed late at night from Tunde's laptop. The dates matched the weeks he kept asking strange questions. Another clue came from somewhere unexpected. Kemi sent a voice note to the family group chat by mistake, thinking she was sending it privately to Femi. It was only 20 seconds long before she deleted it, but I had already heard it. She laughed and said, "Once the hotel opens, Amara will calm down. She likes acting principled until money starts coming." I replayed those words 3 times, not because I needed proof anymore, because I needed the truth to stop wearing a polite face. Still, one piece was missing. I needed direct evidence that I had never signed anything at the bank. Ifeoma helped again, carefully and legally. She told me there had been a private meeting at the branch with a relationship manager. The office corridor had security cameras. Access to footage needed a formal request. Barrister Namdi filed it immediately. 3 more days passed. Tunde became nervous. He started watching me too closely. He offered me gifts. He offered apologies without details. He said we should travel after Kemi's wedding and reset. I nodded when necessary. Inside, I was done. Then the footage came. The timestamp showed Tunde entering the bank office with Femi and a branch officer. I was nowhere near that building. At the exact time their documents claimed I signed in person, I was inside my office in Yaba leading a stock audit meeting. My company attendance logs confirmed it. I felt sick, but steady. Then came the detail I had not expected. The branch officer handling their file had received money from the hotel company account 2 days later. Not a salary, not a fee, a transfer. At that point, this was no longer a family misunderstanding. It was fraud. I thought the truth would make me feel strong. Instead, it made me feel quiet. Because by then, I knew something painful. Tunde did not betray me in one weak moment. He betrayed me through many planned steps. And I still did not know what would happen when everyone was forced to face it. The final meeting happened at that same luxury hotel in Victoria Island. Tunde's investors were growing nervous because loan repayment had already started dragging. The bank had raised internal questions. Barrister Namdi advised me not to create a private fight. He wanted a formal confrontation with everyone present. So I agreed. That was the room where the lawyer opened the file and the silence began. The investors sat on one side. Tunde's family sat on the other. The bank's legal officer arrived with a thin face and colder eyes. Even the branch manager came. Nobody was smiling by then. Barrister Namdi spoke plainly. He laid out the timeline, document by document. My fixed deposit was broken without consent. My deed was used as collateral. My signature was forged. The company receiving the benefit did not include me. Then the bank legal officer placed printed attendance records on the table. I was at work when the signing supposedly happened. After that, the security footage played on a screen. There was Tunde. There was Femi. There was the branch officer. There was no me. Mama Bisi tried to say I must have sent permission through my husband. The bank officer shut that down immediately. Consent for such a loan required my physical presence or verified legal authorization. There was neither. Then came the final blow. The handwriting review report. It concluded that the signature on the loan pages was an imitation built from copied samples. The source likely came from pre-existing documents. I looked at Tunde as that sentence was read aloud. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Not because of shame, because the money had failed to protect him. One investor stood up and asked the question that finished everything.
So you used a forged family asset to bring us into this deal? Nobody answered. Femi started blaming Tunde. Tunde blamed pressure. Kemi cried. Mama Bisi said family should settle things quietly. The branch officer asked for a recess. The bank legal team refused. I still said nothing for a few seconds. Then I finally spoke. I would have stood beside my husband in hardship. I would have helped him rebuild from honest failure. But I will never stand beside a man who destroys me and calls it family support. Nobody moved. I did not insult anyone. I did not raise my voice. I only told the truth. And for the first time, the truth was louder than the whole room. The consequences came fast, but not magically. The bank froze the business loan process and opened a fraud case. The branch officer was suspended first, then dismissed. The investors pulled out because no one wanted their names tied to forged collateral. Without fresh money, the hotel project collapsed before launch. Tunde's family had already spent heavily, expecting quick profits. Deposits had been paid, cars had been leased, wedding promises had been made. Suddenly, all the image they loved so much started breaking in public. Kemi's wedding still happened, but the mood changed completely. The groom's family heard about the scandal and reduced their involvement with Tunde's side. People whispered through the reception. Every smile looked forced. At home, my marriage was already over in my heart. Legal papers only followed later. Tunde came to me twice, begging. Not once did he begin with the truth. He began with fear. Please, withdraw the complaint. Think about my future. Think about what people will say. I listened, and I noticed something important. He never asked what his betrayal had done to me. He only feared what justice would do to him. That was when I understood I had not lost a husband in that season. I had discovered I never truly had one. The court process took time, but the core result was clear. The house remained mine. The misuse of my fixed deposit became part of the record. Tunde had to repay what he diverted and face the legal consequences tied to the false documents and financial fraud. Mama Bisi stopped calling me. For the first time in years, silence felt like respect. Starting again was not easy, but it was clean. I moved out before the divorce was finalized and rented a modest flat in Surulere. It was smaller than the life I once imagined,
but every key inside my handbag belonged to peace. Nobody could borrow my trust and call it investment again. At work, something changed in me. I stopped shrinking my voice to keep others comfortable. I took a professional certification I had delayed for years. 6 months later, I was promoted to finance manager. The increase was not just salary, it was confidence. It was proof that steady people still move forward, even after deep betrayal. I also started a small weekend program at my church for women. We talked about savings, property papers, boundaries, and the difference between support and self-destruction. I did not tell my full story at first. I only shared what I wished someone had told me earlier. Love does not ask you to disappear. Family does not mean access without accountability. Patience is a gift, but without boundaries, it becomes permission for abuse. Slowly, women began staying back after each session. Some cried, some asked questions, some brought documents they had never read properly. Every time I helped one woman understand her rights, I felt a little more healed. A year later, I bought another property plan. Smaller land, smaller dream, stronger foundation. This time, I registered everything with a clear mind and stronger walls. People often ask if I hate Tunde now. I do not. Hate is too heavy, and I have carried enough. What I feel is distance, honest distance, the kind that protects healing. I forgave him for my own peace, but I never returned to the fire that burned me. That is the difference. Today, when I sit alone on my balcony after work, I do not think about the hotel. I do not think about the money. I do not even think about the embarrassment. I think about the woman who stayed calm when her whole life was shaking. I think about the day truth finally entered the room and refused to leave. And I think about how many people confuse love with endurance. Love is not silent theft. Love is not forged signatures. Love is not using someone's future to fund your pride. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak is not losing a person. It is realizing they were willing to lose you first. Still, I learned something beautiful from that pain. A broken trust can ruin a marriage, but it does not have to ruin a life. The day my husband chose money over love, he believed he was securing his future. Instead, he opened the door for karma to enter his own house. And me? I finally walked into a life where peace did not need permission. Sometimes losing the people you trusted becomes the first step toward finding yourself.